grab a pen, grab a notepad. I want to share some things with you, but like always, I want to start off by asking you a question. My question for you is this, is there something that you've been wanting to start, something that you've been meaning to start that, you know what, to be honest with you, you've really been afraid? I mean, I don't know what that thing is for you. And I want you to be honest. You've been a little bit afraid. You've been thinking about doing this career change, and, you keep having great conversations about it. But at the end of the day, you know what? You're really afraid. You're afraid of the uncertainty. You're afraid of the failure. You're afraid of having to start something new. Or maybe you've been really considering and thinking about, putting yourself in position to do that thing that you really are passionate about, that thing that you've been wanting to do. And there's a part of you that really wants to do it, but there's another part of you that's afraid. When you talk to your friends and family, you come up with these fancy excuses, but at the end of the day, what bottom line is, deep down on the inside, you're just a little bit scared, just a little scared. You're scared that, things may not work out. You're scared of the criticism. You're scared of the rejection. You're scared of the uncertainty of the things happening out. For most of us, if we're honest, for most of us who are trying to get to the next level, or we're perhaps trying to do something new, there is something that we're a little afraid of, something that we are really wanting to do, but there's some fear in there and that we're afraid. And so here's what I want you to write down, and here's what I want you to realize. You can't be afraid to be afraid. Write that down. Don't be afraid to be afraid. I want you to write that down because I really need this to sink in. One more time. I want you to write it down. Don't be afraid to be afraid. You say, well, Andy, what do you mean by that? Here's what I need you to realize. You hear all this talk all the time where people are telling you, listen, don't be afraid, have courage, lean in and make some things happen. But here's the reality. If that's a bunch of hocus pocus, I'm telling you right now, most of them are significant things that you're going to do in life. When you decide to walk down that aisle and go ahead and give your life over to somebody for the rest of your life, when you say, I do, for better or for worse, till death do you part, and you make the decision that you're going to spend the rest of your life with one person, listen, you're going to be afraid. When you make the decision that you're going to go ahead and take your savings, right, and you're going to have that conversation with yourself and maybe that conversation with your spouse, and you're about to take all your savings and put it into an investment or go ahead and start a business, trust and believe you will be afraid. When you've been working for that company for the past 10 years, for the past 5 years, or this is the career that you're used to getting that paycheck every 2 weeks, and that paycheck is hitting your bank account every 2 weeks, and now you're thinking about walking away from that job. You're thinking about leaving that paycheck. You're thinking about leaving and walking into some uncertainty to go out and pursue your goals and your dreams. Guess what? You are going to be afraid. Listen to me. Don't allow anybody to convince you that at any given time when you're trying to do something significant in your life, that you're going to somehow, some way be able to completely eliminate fear. No, that's not going to happen. And so you've got to say right now, you've got to resolve within yourself and understand that you've just got to understand this. Don't be afraid to be afraid. And you say, well, Andy, tell me a little more what you mean by that. You see, being afraid is part of the process. You see, if you look back in your life, you look back at some of the most significant things that you've done, those life-changing moments, those defining moments, as I like to call them. If you look back at those moments, chances are in those moments you were afraid. For the ladies who are listening to me right now, that moment when you find out you were pregnant and you're about to give birth to an amazing child, listen, as excited as you were, you probably were very afraid. You're afraid of the changes that were going to happen in your body. You're afraid of the changes that were going to happen in your life. For the gentlemen who are listening to me right now, that moment when you decide to just sort of move out on your own or go ahead and start stepping into your manhood and trying to figure things out, or that moment you decide that, you know what, that you're going to go ahead and take somebody on to be your wife, and you've made a decision now, you're going to be the protector, the provider, and so forth. Listen, chances are in that moment, even though you were excited, you were afraid. So trust me on this and realize this, that being afraid is going to be part of the process. Don't let anybody convince you or anybody try to talk you into thinking that at any time you're going to be able to eliminate the fear. And so what I need you to understand this is that even though you're afraid, the difference between those who have massive success, the difference between those who make things happen is that even in the midst of the fear, even when they're afraid, they still take action. That's the thing. The fear doesn't really go away. No. The only difference is between the winners and the losers is that the winners, even though they feel fearful when they're about to start the business, even though they feel fearful when they're about to step outside their comfort zone, even though they feel fearful when they're going to make that life-altering decision, even though they feel fearful when they're about to make the investment, whatever it is, even though they feel fearful, guess what they do? They do it anyway. And as Joyce Meyer says, they do it afraid. And so I need you to understand this, that you can't be afraid to be afraid. And you've got to understand that this is absolutely part of the process. My brother and his wife decided to make a very major move. They had a pretty nice home, a 4-bedroom home. I think it was like 2.5 bath, 2-car garage and a gated community and so forth. And so they made the decision that, we're going to upgrade. We're going to take our lives to the next level. And so they made the decision to sell their existing home, their home that was, probably well over about 3,500 square feet. And they made the decision then at that point that they're going to move into a very small apartment. And the reason why they're moving to a small apartment is because now they're about to build a home. They're going to build a beautiful home, over about 4,500 square feet on an acre lot. And so, I've been having these conversations with my brother, right? I'm having these conversations with my brother, and he's talking about how he's going to be building his home. And as we're having these conversations and we continue to talk about these conversations, what I could tell you is that from speaking to my brother, that he continues to share with me as like, that he's fearful about this process, because there's so much of this process is unknown. The stakes are so high. I mean, they're literally putting in all of their savings. They had to go out and get a construction loan. They had to purchase this lot, a lot that they paid over 6 figures for. And now they're going to be working with a contractor, and they got to go through this process, and they got to pay for impact fees, and they're going to have to, figure out and go back and forth with the architect and start coming up with the finishing and so forth. And we're having this conversation, and I'm listening to my brother, and one part of him, he's happy about pursuing his goals and his dreams. Another part of him, you can tell, has a lot of trepidation. There's another part of him that is very much fearful. And when I'm listening to him and he's sharing this with me, and I was talking to him, I was having a conversation, I had to tell him, I said, Ralph, listen, here's something you got to understand. That this fear that you're experiencing right now, that you've got to understand that this is going to be part of the process. That there's going to be a lot of uncertainty throughout this process. There's going to be a lot of things that is going to be a little intimidating and fearful in this process because of the amount of money that you're spending, because of the amount of time that it takes to actually build a custom home like this, because of the uncertainty, because you've never actually done it before, because of the fact that you have to get uncomfortable. You and your wife, you moved out of this massive home and into this little apartment. And so there's a lot of things that I expect you to really be afraid of, a lot of things that I expect you to be fearful of. But I said, listen, man, just get used to it. And you got to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. You got to get comfortable with the fact that you're going to be afraid through this process. And so I share this with you right now, that whatever it is that you've been thinking about doing, that you want to take to that next level, understanding that being afraid is part of the process, understanding that you are going to have to do it afraid, that you can't be afraid to be afraid, right? And so you got to understand that even in spite of the fear, you've got to continue to literally do it afraid. And so my brother, you know what? When this home is built, when it's all said and done, I think he's going to look back, and this is probably going to be one of his biggest achievements, a lifelong dream, to have a beautiful home that's sitting on an acre lot, to have this home with his wife and my nephew, and to be able to entertain people and relax. And they're going to sit back one day and they're going to really enjoy this. But let me tell you, along the process, there's going to be a lot of fear involved. Along the process, there's going to be a lot of discomfort. And so that's what I want to say to you. I don't know what your project is. Maybe you're not building a home, but maybe you're trying to build another level of your life. Maybe you're trying to build a marriage. Maybe you're trying to build a business. Maybe you're trying to build a coaching career. Maybe you're trying to build a speaking career. Maybe you're trying to build a new lifestyle. Maybe you're trying to go after the things that you want. Understand that whatever it is that you're building in your life, that when you decide that you're going to take it to the next level, when you decide that you're going to up your game, then realize this, that there's going to be some fear involved, and that literally you cannot be afraid to be afraid. And so you've got to understand that this is absolutely part of the process. This is just something that you're going to have to do. You're going to actually have to do this. And I need you to get this, because this is the only way that you're going to be able to take your life to the next level. This is the only way. And you know what? Don't allow anybody to convince you. Don't let anybody convince you that, you know what? What you have to do is overcome the fear first, and then go after your goals and your dreams. Overcome the fear first and then write the book. Overcome the fear first and then start the business. Overcome the fear first and then decide that, you know what, that you're going to go ahead and make this commitment to be with somebody for the rest of your life. Overcome the fear first and make, no, it doesn't happen that way. It's not going to happen that way. No. What happens is, in the midst of the fear, you got to be willing to still take some action. In the midst of the fear, you got to be willing still to lean in. In the midst of the fear, you got to be willing to just continue to engage. And so you got to understand that you can't be afraid to be afraid, and you got to understand that this is in fact part of the process. I look at right now that part of the reason that I've been able to create the life that I want for myself right now, being able to travel across the country and attend personal development events and deliver keynote messages and train people on how to develop their voices, and having the opportunity to have been able to make a couple of television appearances and developing products and pouring into people and having a movement with hundreds of people and so forth. Really, the reason why I was able to create that is because somewhere along the process, and this was back in 2004, that when I was thinking about taking a chance on myself, and I was thinking about taking my life to the next level, I want you to realize this, that somewhere along that process, there was a ton of fear there, right? There was the fear of the uncertainty, the fear of what if things don't work out for me, the fear of, of walking away from my accounting profession, the fear of not being able to figure everything out, the fear of trying to take my life to the next level. There's a lot of fear there, the fear of the unknown, the fear of failure, the fear of rejection. There's all kind of things going on in my mind. But here's what I need you to realize. Here's what I need you to realize. I would not be where I am right now in my life had I not been willing to push past that fear, had I not understood that that was part of the process. If I was sitting there waiting on all the fear to go away, if I was sitting there waiting for there to be absolutely no doubt, if I was sitting there waiting that the fear of failure, the fear of rejection, the fear of uncertainty, all those things to completely subside and that fear be completely removed, I'm going to tell you right now, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing right now. I'd probably still be with the same company, still working as an accountant, still working as a CPA. And this voice that you're hearing right now, you wouldn't even hear it. It wouldn't even exist in this capacity. And what I'm trying to make you understand is that the only deciding factor, the only difference in that moment is not that the fear was gone. The only thing that changed is that I was willing to move forward in spite of the fear. There's a gentleman by the name of Ambrose Redmoon, and here's what he said. He said that courage is not the absence of fear. No, he said that courage is the judgment, that the thing that you want is greater than the fear. And so here's what I want you to realize. There's some things that you want right now, some things that you want. Maybe you want to, like I was telling you, maybe you want to take your life to the next level. You want to do that thing that you're passionate about. You want to write that book. You want to shift some gears. You want to make some amazing things happen. And so here's what I want you to realize, that courage is the judgment that thing, that very thing that you want, and you know what that thing is for you. It's the judgment that thing that you want is greater than the fear. Courage is not the fact that fear has completely gone away. No, it's the fact that you have made the decision that in spite of the fear that you are going to move forward anyway. Okay. And so I want you to think about that thing that you've been wanting to move towards, that thing that you've been wanting to do, that thing that you want to take to the next level. I want you to think about what that thing is for you. I want to give you a quick moment to think about what that is for you. I know there's a lot of people on this line, you're listening in and you're watching in right now. Many of you have a desire to become an entrepreneur. You always wanted to start your own business. You've been thinking about it, but you just haven't done it. Many of you have been thinking about making a career change, and you're working at a job in which you know that job is not really where you want to be. You know that there's another career that you'd rather pursue, but you're holding on to the existing job because you're fearful. Many of you right now that you've been thinking about, upping your game. You want to do something at another level. And every time you start thinking about going big and going to the next level and doing what you got to do to get there, fear kicks in and you start second guessing yourself. You start wondering whether or not you can actually make this thing happen. And so here's what I need you to realize. I want you to think about what that thing is for you. And what I want you to realize is this, is that you can't be afraid to be afraid. You got to understand that, that feeling that you have, that feeling of fear, that fear of failure, that fear of rejection, the fear of not being enough, the fear that of the uncertainty of the unknown, that fear is not necessarily just going to go away like that. And so what you've got to be conditioned yourself to do is, in spite of the way that you're feeling, in spite of the fear that's going on right now in your life, that you've got to condition yourself to move forward anyway. You've got to condition yourself to be willing to move forward in spite of how you're feeling, And so listen, don't give in to your emotions. Listen, that feeling of fear, that feeling of fear has paralyzed a lot of people and has kept a lot of people from moving forward on their goals and dreams. It's kept a lot of people from doing that thing that they have been called to do. And so, you know what, as a matter of fact, it was Mark Twain that said 20 years from now, you will be more disappointed by the things that you didn't do than the things that you did do. And most people, the reason why they don't do certain things is because oftentimes the reason why is because why? Number one, there's a feeling of inadequacy, that they can't make it happen. But another major reason why people don't move forward on their goals and their dreams is because of fear. They're fearful. They don't believe that it's possible for them. They don't believe that they can make it happen. They don't believe that they have what's required to get to the next level. And so they start thinking and focusing on all the things that they don't have as opposed to focusing on the things that they do have. And then they start playing this mental game with themselves, and they start building up a case of all the reasons why they should be afraid to take a chance on themselves, all the reasons why they should be afraid to move forward, all the reasons why they should be afraid to up their game. And here's what I want you to realize: that fear is part of the process, and that you can't be afraid to be afraid. Write that down. You can't be afraid to be afraid. And so once you understand that being afraid is a part of the process, then what happens is then at that point, at that moment, now you can decide that, you know what, in spite of how I feel, I'm going to make some things happen. In spite of how I feel, I'm still going to go ahead and start writing the book. In spite of how I feel, I'm still going to go ahead right now in this particular moment. I'm still going to go ahead and start finding a way to start making this career change. I'm still going to go ahead and go back and get my degree. I'm still going to go ahead and invest in my future and start making investments. I'm still going to go ahead and sign up for the coaching that maybe is outside my comfort zone. Whatever that thing is for you, you know what that thing is that you need to do, that you've been putting off because of fear. What I'm saying is, if you could understand that fear is part of the process, then what happens is, and I know this for sure, you'll be able to literally take your life to the next level. So here's what I want you to realize. Here's what I need you to understand: that this fear that you're experiencing in whatever area in your life, understand that this is a part of human nature. That you know, from the moment you're a child and all the way to the moment that you pass away, that as you go through this journey called life, there are things are going to surface in which you're going to be fearful. But the people who live an extraordinary life, the people who make tremendous impact, the people who are the winners in life, it doesn't mean that they don't experience fear. No, what it means is that in the midst of the fear, that they still are willing to move forward. In the midst of the fear, they're still willing to make some things happen. And so what I'm trying to encourage you to do right now is to feel the fear, as Joyce Meyer would say, and to do it anyway. To accept the fact that fear is part of the process. To help you to understand that you can't be afraid of being afraid, because being afraid is part of the process. And don't buy into people trying to convince you that somehow, some way that you're going to, you know, you can find a way to overcome all your fears and fear is going to completely be eliminated. That's a bunch of baloney. Your fear is not going to be completely eliminated. Now, can you still find a way to move? Yes. Will the fear subside? Yes. Can the fear go ahead and become smaller if you continue to push in and you continue to make some things happen? Will your confidence begin to build? Will your comfort zone begin to expand? Will one thing, where at one point something that you used to be fearful of, now you overcome it and you're no longer fearful? Absolutely. But guess what? There'll be something else waiting around the corner for you when you decide to up your game and take it to the next level. Something else that's going to intimidate you. Something else that you're going to be fearful of. And so I need you to understand that it is constantly part of the process. You know, I took a guy's trip a couple years back with some of my buddies. We went out to Costa Rica, and we're out in Costa Rica. I mean, we were having a phenomenal time out in Costa Rica. And while we're in Costa Rica, you know, we checked quite a few things out. We went by the beautiful beaches that were over there in Costa Rica. We went on these ATVs. We went all the way up in the mountains on the ATV. And I mean, we saw these amazing cliffs and all this stuff. And then afterwards, the guys were like, listen, we got one more thing we got to do. I was like, what is that? They're like, listen, we need to go whitewater rafting. I was like, what? Whitewater rafting? I was like, listen, I don't go whitewater rafting. That's something that crazy people do. I've seen the videos of people going whitewater rafting. There's no way I'm doing it. And so I remember this. My boys were like, come on, man, we got to go. I was like, listen, I'll go with you guys. I'll watch the rest of you die, but there's no way that I'm getting in that raft. And so I remember we started driving over there. And while we're driving over there, now we get to the place where we got to, start signing up and getting our rafts and getting our gear and getting our safety vests. And so I'm looking at these guys, and I happen to see one of my buddies signing off the waiver. I look over his shoulder. I mean, he's pretty much signing his life away. It's pretty much telling you that whitewater rafting is dangerous, that there's no way to control the elements, that, there's a possibility that you can sustain injuries. There's even a possibility that you can actually die. Are you listening to me right now? That you can die? And everybody is signing off. And so I'm looking around, and it's about 8 of us on the trip, and everybody has signed off. And now I'm sitting there, and they're looking over at me, and they're like, man, come on, Andy, you chicken, man. What's going on, dude? Everybody's going on the trip. So what are you going to do? You're going to just sort of stand back and just stay there and just wait for us? You want to take pictures for us? Hey, you want to hold our cameras for us? And so, finally, I started feeling like, feeling the peer pressure. And the next thing you know, I start signing off on the paperwork. Right. And then next thing you know, I'm listening to the instructions. I'm putting on the vest. And so the whole time that I'm listening to the instructions, the whole time I'm asking myself, Andy, what are you doing? The entire time I'm absolutely fearful. The fear is there. When they pull up the rafts, I'm still fearful. When they're explaining to me, hey, if you fall out the raft, because this is not uncommon, they say, hey, when you fall out the raft, make sure that you go ahead and lean back and lay on your back. And if you start going downstream, try to put your feet in front of you, because you want to go downstream with your feet first if you end up falling in the water, so that your feet can push off the boulders and so you don't hit your head against one of the boulders. So they're saying everything. The whole time listening to me, I am fearful. I am afraid. I'm like, I can't believe this. This is absolutely insane. I get in the raft, and now, we're pushed off. I'm excited, right? We're seeing the things. We're pushing off the raft. We're going stuff. Some of the guys in the other raft, they fall over, they fall in the water. I'm like, man, this is crazy. This is insane. And the whole time, absolutely fearful. But what happened is, because of the fact that I was willing to push in spite of the fear, because of the fact that I was willing to do it afraid, what happened is, as we continue to go through the process, as we're going downstream now, I'm starting to get a little more comfortable. Now, I'm still fearful, but the level of fear that I had at the beginning and the level of fear that I have towards the middle is there's a big disparity. There's starting to be a shift. And so what I'm trying to make you understand is, no matter how much fear you have, if at the moment when it's time for you to go ahead and make the decision, if you're willing to just sort of push in, if you're willing to just do it afraid, what happened is, no matter how fearful you are, trust me on this, as you go through the process, at some point that fear will begin to subside. And so here's what I want you to do. If you're a note taker, I want you to write this down. The first thing is that you got to understand is, you got to understand upfront that you can't be afraid to be afraid. And so acknowledge that fear is part of the process. Understand that is absolutely part of the process. You are going to be afraid throughout different parts and different seasons of your life. And this is one of those things that we're going to have to battle for the rest of our lives, that when you decide to up the game, when you're going to step outside of your comfort zone, when you're going to take things to the next level, guess what? You are going to be fearful. There is going to be some fear there. Understand that. Accept the fact and understand that you can't be afraid to be afraid. Don't be afraid to be afraid. Listen, you understand that, right? That is part of the process. And now, once you understand that that is part of the process, here's the second thing that I need you to understand. Don't wait for the feeling of fear to leave you before you take action. I'm going to say that one more time. Don't wait for the feeling of the fear to leave you before you take action. You say, well, Andy, why is that? Because here's what happens. Most of the time, that feeling is not going to completely eliminate you. And if you want that feeling to go away, believe it or not, you got to do instinctively the very opposite of what you want to do. So when you feel fear, what do you want to do? You want to stop. Right? You want to press the pause button. You want to call a timeout, right? You don't want to move forward, because fear has the ability to paralyze us when we give into it. And so naturally, the reason why we don't move forward when we're fearful is because we're trying to protect ourselves from getting hurt. We're trying to protect ourselves from the unknown. We're trying to protect ourselves from criticism. But if you can understand this, that if you cannot give into the emotion of trying to hope that the fear is going to go away, and if you're willing to go ahead and take action in spite of the fear, believe it or not, once you begin to act, once you begin to go through your personal process, that fear that you had at the beginning, that fear will begin to shrink. That fear will begin to subside. In some cases, the fear will become very small. In other cases, the fear will go ahead and leave you altogether. It doesn't mean you're not going to have another type of fear waiting for you around the corner when you decide to do the next thing. But what happens is, ultimately, eventually you'll get there. You remember, for those of you who know how to ride a bike, you remember when you were first trying to learn how to ride a bike, right? You were afraid. You got on that bike, you're trying to balance yourself, you're afraid of falling, you don't want to hurt yourself, you don't want to skin your knees or whatever. But what happened is, when you were willing to continue to get on that bike in spite of the fear, and you begin to learn how to pedal, you begin to learn how to keep your balance and so forth, that fear that you had, not only did it subside, but after a while, that fear for many of us completely went away, right? Now we're like, riding a bike is a bike is a bike. I could get on the bike, and take my hands off the steering wheel, because what happened is you were willing to do it while you're afraid. And so that fear went away. So don't give in to waiting and thinking that you've got to let that feeling go away first before you take action. What I'm saying is you got to actually do the contrary. You got to take action and understand that once you decide to take action, eventually that fear will begin to go away. It will begin to shrink, and in some cases, it'll completely go away. And so, number one, you've got to understand that fear is part of the process, and that you can't be afraid to be afraid, and understand that it's part of the process. You got to acknowledge what it is. Number two, you got to understand that you can't wait for the certain feeling to leave you, and you have to absolutely understand, listen, don't wait for the feeling to leave you. Understand that you have to be willing to take action. You have to do it afraid, like Joyce Meyer said, and through the act of taking action, even when you're fearful, that fear will begin to get smaller, and in some cases, the fear will completely go away. And then the other thing is, you got to understand is, at the end of the day, that you've got to continue this process. You've got to continue this process and understand that throughout life, as you continue to take your life to the next level, as you continue to pursue your goals and your dreams, as you continue to try to make some things happen, understand, absolutely understand, that fear is going to be part of the process. But here's what I want you to also understand, that even though fear is part of the process, that the defining factor between those that are winners in life and those that are losers. And when I say losers, it's not polite to call people losers, but I'm talking about those that fall short of their goals and their dreams, those that don't even act on their goals and their dreams, those that go through life playing it small, that don't even reach a fraction of what their potential is. The difference between those who are winners, those who go after their goals and their dreams, they don't always win. Right? Winners don't always win. Sometimes winners fail, but they're willing to move forward in spite of the fear. The major difference between the winners in life and the losers in life is that the winners, in spite of the fact that they feel fearful, that they're willing to move forward and they're willing to do it anyway. And so when you make the decision that you're going to be a winner in your life, when you make the decision that you're going to make some things happen, you've got to make the decision up front. You've got to be one to make the decision that in spite of the fear, in spite of everything going on, that you're going to continue to move forward. You're going to continue to make those things happen. So I go back to what I originally told you. Listen to me on this. Don't be afraid to be afraid. Don't be afraid to be afraid. Right now, you've got something that you want to do, something that you want to take to the next level. I don't know what that thing is for you, but I want you to think about what that thing is that you've been putting off. You've been coming up with sophisticated reasons why you haven't been willing to do it, why you haven't moved forward. But at the end of the day, deep down inside, you know what it is. You are afraid. And it's okay to be afraid. Don't be afraid to be afraid. But what I'm trying to make you understand is once you understand that you can be afraid and you understand it's part of the process, then you got to be willing to act in spite of the fear. You got to do it afraid, like Joyce Meyer said. And don't wait for the emotion of fear to completely leave you before you decide to take action. Of course, finally, the difference between the winners and the losers is that even though the winners experience the same fear, the winners have the fear of rejection, the fear of the unknown, the fear of the uncertainty, the fear of failure, the fear of things not going out, the fear of criticism, all those fears, the winners have them too. But the only difference is that the winners are willing to act anyway. And so what I'm saying to you right now is you got to be willing to do it afraid. You can't be afraid to be afraid. You've got to act in spite of the fear. And so I want you to think about that area in your life that you've been putting off, the area in your life you've been wanting to take action. And I want to challenge you to understand that, you know what, this fear that you're experiencing, I want to challenge you to understand that this is part of the process. And I want to challenge you to act in spite of the fear. You know, this wouldn't be Andy Henriquez if I didn't end by telling you this. Show up for your lives, ladies and gentlemen, because if you don't, nobody else will. And of course, let me tell you, I'm so excited that all of you decide to go ahead and tune in for the Show Up for Your Life motivational movement and the live stream. You know, I am fighting off the sniffles. And of course, those of you who are watching the live stream, I do apologize for all those times. But listen, we had to go ahead and keep this message going. I said, you know what, I'm not going to let the little sniffles go ahead and keep me from doing this live stream or go ahead and doing this motivational call. And so, of course, I want to thank every single one of you for being a part of the Show Up for Your Life motivational movement. If for some reason we're not yet connected, here's what I want you to do. I want you to go to showupforyourlife.com. Go to showupforyourlife.com. Go ahead and check right there where when you get there, you're going to see a banner where you can put your name and your email address. Put your name and your email address there, and that's going to allow me to stay connected with you. I'm going to be able to send you an instant motivational message, but I'm going to continue to send you